Hey everyone, this is Scott from Forgot to Grow Up. Welcome to another edition of ReWatching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Today I'm talking about Season 4, Episode 22, The Return. I'm just going to be starting off with the plot summary and then just talking about my general thoughts after having rewatched this episode. So yeah, that plot summary is the agents on the Zephyr 1 fight off Ivanov's men and race to the platform to save Coulson and May from Ivanov's android bodies. Ivanov launches torpedoes at the platform that threatens Mac's body, but the latter is saved by Ophelia, convinced by Fitz to put to good use the inhuman abilities his machine had given her new body. In isolation at S.H.I.E.L.D., Fitz and Ophelia discuss her newly discovered human emotions and the fact that he remembers all the terrible things he did inside the framework. He admits that he ultimately still loves Simmons over her outraging Ophelia. Talbot arrives at the ruined S.H.I.E.L.D. base where Ophelia kills several of his soldiers and other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Coulson and the others flee in the Zephyr 1 once more, while Ophelia returns to Ivanov, who plans to use knowledge from the dark hole to apply the changed reality of the framework to the real world. Meanwhile, Yo-Yo enters the framework herself to try to convince Mac to leave, and the Ghost Rider returns through a portal from another dimension. So yeah, I just finished watching this episode, and I really enjoyed this episode. This is the second last episode of this season, and I really like this one because we get this whole, a bunch of this episode is just really about, Ophelia. I prefer to call her Ada just because I always feel like I'm saying Ophelia wrong. But yeah, so Ada spends this whole time being learning about her new emotions and experiencing them and learning about what it's like to experience all these sensations and starting to learn a little bit about empathy and what she put everybody else through. And then it all turns on her because Fitz doesn't feel the same way as she does, and she gets a little upset about that, and I freaking love it. I just love it because we spend this whole episode with her kind of puppy dog holding on to him. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but yeah, just really thinking that they're going to be together. And Fitz doesn't really say either way what's going on with him throughout the episode till we get to that scene where they're in the isolation and she snaps because he's like, well, no, Simmons the only one in my heart. And I love it because it's Fitz Simmons. It's always Fitz Simmons. Screw you, Ada. But also because it's you don't really see it coming. Even on the rewatch, obviously I knew it was coming on the rewatch, but you kind of you don't 100% sense it coming, and you feel her shock because he didn't really make it seem like that up to this point. Especially, he does kind of lead her into thinking at first that maybe Fitz doesn't have feelings for Simmons anymore, but that's not the case. And yeah, Ada goes a little ape shit, and yeah, as Ivanov puts it in this episode, she's got a broken heart, and yeah, there's no inhuman powers to solve that problem. So I just love that kind of being the basis and her motivation for just being yep, let's screw it, let's finish ending the world. Fitz didn't love me like I wanted him to. Let's end the world. Let's do it. Where's Ivanov? Let's end this world. I'm just nice, Ada. Way to go. You just get emotions, and the first thing you're going to do is get your heart broken and decide to just blow up the world after that. Way to go, girl. I just kind of love that motivation. That idea of that motivation for especially somebody who just got their emotions. It makes sense because if you would just come into if you had knowledge of emotions but had never experienced them, and then you suddenly experience them, that'd be extremely overwhelming. Most of us experience them, and that's how we learn about our emotions, right? We experience them, and we'll learn what they're like, as opposed to Ada, who knew what emotions were but didn't feel them until she got her body. And so I just really like that kind of idea behind that, the concept. But yeah, some of the other things I enjoyed about this episode is we get a lot of May and Coulson kind of catching up, trying to Coulson trying to dance around the fact that he got a little close with the LMD May, and he doesn't want to tell the real May that, until he finally does let her know that he drank the bottle. And I just kind of like that dynamic we got between those two. They're always a great dynamic, but I enjoy that kind of Coulson being oh, sorry, in my defense, you are robotic all the time. You're never robotic, May. I just love that line from him, and just those little scenes where they're catching up between those two. Yeah, I already mentioned the Ada and Fitz part, and then she snaps. I like that they introduced the fact that she has inhuman powers. I remember when it first came up in when I was first watching this season on TV, or as it was coming out, I should say, because I'm watched it on cable. But as it was coming out first, I remember just being like, oh shit, I didn't even think of that. That's awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. Why not? Why not? If you're gonna print yourself a body, why not print it with some powers? That just seems logical to me. That's just like, I don't know why you wouldn't. If you have the ability, why not do it? So I just really enjoyed that aspect too. And then at the end with Ghost Rider coming back at the very end of this episode, that again, like when I watched the show first, I remember being like, oh snap, he did come back. Ah. And then even on the rewatch, you get so invested in this episode, you don't even really think about it, and then it pops up in those last 5-10 seconds of the episode, and you're like, yeah, Ghost Rider's coming back to help end off the season, and that's the way I like to see it. So I'm excited to get to the next episode, finish off season 4 before I start on to season 5. But yeah, be sure to let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode. Thanks again for joining me today. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Have a good one.